host Ruby. If you're watching for the first time, welcome, and we're very glad you're here. I want to start off today's show with something that I'm planning on doing for every guild chat here on out. This is just to give you guys, as players, a little bit more insight into what we're doing, what we're working on, what we're creating, what we're improving here at ArenaNet. We're going to start with two things today. I talked to a couple of our developer teams. I talked to game designer Matt Pennebaker, and you may have already seen this on the forums. But Matt's been doing a lot of work on legendary collections, just things that you guys have been giving feedback on, things that you've been running into. And Matt's been putting in some work on studying and improving those. Some of them are going in next Tuesday on the build on January 12th. But Matt's had a lot of things to say. He's been answering a lot of questions on what he's working on, things that can go in now, things that are taking a little bit longer to fix, and why that is. And you can find, we've gathered all of that into a post on the Guild Wars 2 forums. You can look in the bug forum and find that to see what he's doing with that. So I know that's the thing a lot of you guys have been interested in, so we wanted to let you know what we're doing with that.
Yeah, quick to add to that one is I think we've said before, we've got a whole new set of legendaries that you'll see slowly roll out over time. He and his team are going to be building those out. Right now, they're focused on making sure that the precursors and legendaries we put in the game today are all functioning the way that we want them to, that we're listening to player feedback and iterating on those. And then their next big project is to start building out more and more new legendaries for the game as well, taking lessons from the ones we've put in so far. Yeah. So that's just one more thing to look forward to from Matt and that team.
Yeah, I had an interesting talk with one of our producers yesterday about that, and it made me really excited about what's coming. So
I've seen some of the new legendaries. They're amazing.
I haven't seen them yet, so please email me or something. Guide me to these, because I've been not spoiling myself. So the other thing I wanted to mention, I know some of you are curious about a balance update, and we're pulling together some news right now about our goals for balance in each class. We're going to have a really big blog post about that next week, and Carl Maclaine is going to join me next Friday on Guild Chat to talk a little bit more about what our goals are for balance in this first quarter. So that's a little bit of news for what's going on behind the scenes. You can find that in every Guild Chat coming up.
Yeah, and that's going to become a regular thing.
Yep.
We talked about this around when Hot launched, but one of our big goals for the game is every 3 months or so, every quarter, to have a big balance update that kind of shakes up the meta for the next 3 months. So we have next week, we'll be revealing all the information, like Ruby said, about the first big balance update of 2016. But that's something you'll be able to look forward to every 3 months after that as well, is a really big update. And then obviously between those updates, smaller tweaks like we've been doing. But
Perfect.
yeah, it'll be really nice to settle into that. I think we've heard a lot from players over the last few years. They'd really like more frequent balance updates. They want to know exactly when to expect them and how often, and they'd like to see strong changes to the meta in the game when those happen. And that is exactly what you're going to see. So
awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to being able to tell you all about that next week.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of cool stuff coming next week. Since we got Colin in here, we're going to take really good advantage of your time. We're going to talk to you guys today about what we're planning for 2016 and what we've got coming up. You've been working on a blog post for next week about this. This will come out on the 12th. We have a lot going on the 12th.
Yes, next Tuesday is a big day, a build and a blog.
Yeah, but we're going to give you a preview today. First, can we talk a little bit about development balance and how we're planning on doing that in the 2016 year?
Yeah, next Tuesday I have the next State of the Game blog will come out, and that'll cover both a combination of what's coming up, not everything, but a lot of what's coming up in the next 3 months, and also kind of a high-level view into where we're going with Guild Wars 2 in 2016. And we're going to give you a little bit of a preview of some of that stuff that's in that blog here today, and then a lot of it we're going to save for next Tuesday. But development balance.
As always, this is so hard.
Development balance is the kind of the headliner, the start of that blog. And I think if you look back on what we've done development-wise, in 2012, 2013, 2014, predominantly our focus was on regular updates to Guild Wars 2. We had for a long time, every 4 weeks, we were doing updates and feature packs occasionally. We reached a point where actually even every 2 weeks we were doing updates with Living World for a while, and that was insane. 2015 was the year where our development focus shifted to be very heavily on Heart of Thorns in our first expansion, with a little bit of updating as well to the game. This year, our focus is really to find a balance in development between the two. We want to have more frequent game updates for everybody, and we want to be able to continue to work on the next expansion simultaneously. So that's a lot of what you're going to see this year, is a combination of more frequent game updates, more regularly, and more balanced across different parts of the game. We really want to treat PvP, PvE, World versus World, as all of them as our core game modes for Guild Wars 2, and frequently update each of them. And within them, continue to update the core content pieces that make up those. So we want to have updates to Fractals and have updates to Living World, have updates to World versus World and to PvP. All of those are things that we'll be focusing on, new raids, as we kind of balance development across this year, where we're also working towards the next expansion as well. So that's really kind of what balanced development means to us, and what you're going to see in 2016 is a much more balanced strategy, development-wise.
Yeah. So I kind of want to emphasize again, all the game modes.
Yeah, that's very important. And if you look back on what our plan was for 2015, and a lot of what we wanted to do with Heart of Thorns, it was really kind of a broad development strategy, and I think that's been true of ArenaNet really for as long as I can remember. Is we're a company who works on tons of different stuff. We experiment all the time. I think everything from Living World to the way that you update live games, to looking back to Guild Wars 1, like having some of the things we did with expansions, like 2 expansions in a year, that was crazy and burnt most of us out horribly.
Ambitious.
But we really try to do a lot of different things, and I think we're at the point now with Guild Wars 2, 3 years in, where we really need to start focusing on depth instead of breadth. We've spent all of this time building out all these game systems and different types of content, and ways we can deliver cool things to the players. And I really want our teams to focus on, let's take those things that we've built and let's just polish those and add a lot more content to them, instead of trying to do different experiments and trying to add new game systems. We're past the point now where that really, that's going to provide so much value. We know what Guild Wars 2 is about. We've learned what works over the last few years. Let's just start doubling down on the things that are great. I think there's one part of the game that we haven't accomplished that goal yet, to be at a point where we can just polish and add new content. That's World versus World. Our goal last year was actually to get our big overhaul for World versus World out before Heart of Thorns, so that when we added the new Borderlands map, when we added things like guild claiming, they complemented a functional game system that had all the core structure to it we needed to have. That project's turned out to be much larger than we ever anticipated.
Yeah, it really is enormous.
Yeah, I mean, they've been working on it for over a year now, and in particular the principal programmer on that, Chris, has been working on the World versus World overhaul for like a year to get to the point where a whole bunch of other people can work on it, which is kind of where we're at right now. So I would say World versus World is the one part of the game where we still have a lot of core fundamental things that we need to do, between population balance and scoring and rewards, night capping. John Corpening, our game director in charge of that project, has kind of summarized a couple times his thoughts on where that's going. But that's the last kind of broad project that we have on the books. And then once that's done, we'll be at a point with World versus World where we can focus on depth as well, which is just adding more content and just polishing the experience. And every other part of the game that we're going to continue to build on, that's really what you're going to see from here on out. Is let's polish exactly what we've got. Let's deal with any bugs that came out from Heart of Thorns, any feedback we got from Heart of Thorns. Let's continue to iterate on that. And then let's just start adding new content to all of those areas. So yeah, that's what you have to look forward to in Guild Wars 2. And next Tuesday, we'll put a blog out that actually makes some of that real and shows you some of the things that we're going to do.
Yeah. So this is, we've got this coming up toward the end of the month. And then for the rest of 2016, we're kind of planning on seasonal updates.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more
we're
about that.
Go into that in detail.
Yeah, we'll cover a lot more of that in the blog next Tuesday, with the announcements of kind of how some of the stuff that you have to look forward to. Later this year, we'll go into more details on more of the things that we'll be adding to regular updates for Guild Wars 2. Some of those are things you'll see in the next 3 months. Some of those are things that we're going to get into later this year, that we'll talk about down the road. I think the PvP team actually published today their plans for all the updates they're going to make to Season 2 of Leagues.
There's a huge forum post out right now in all 4 languages, so if you missed that, go find it in our forums.
And I think that's a great example of this depth rather than breadth strategy, right? It's like we have Leagues now. They're one of the core components that we're going to be using to update PvP in the future, along with obviously new types of PvP maps, things like that. All of those types of things, basically, that's our focus now. Let's polish and let's add content. and the PvP team's plans for PvP Season 2 is ideally, hopefully, taking a vast majority of the feedback we've gotten from the players. I hope you look at that and say, yeah, it looks like they addressed almost all of our feedback. We're probably not going to get every single thing in Season 2, but I think we got probably 90%, 95% of the big feedback pieces we're going to be able to address, and we'd like to be able to do that for each of the other parts of the game as we go forward, too.
Yeah. All right, so we have a lot coming up. I feel like I shouldn't even say anything because something's going to slip out, but...
Yes, wait till next Tuesday.
Yeah, next Tuesday is going to be a fun day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, all right, that was like a lot of information packed into a short amount of time, so we'll let you guys digest that for a few minutes. We have a couple more guests to come on. We're going to switch you out and
now
let
is
you
the
get back
fun
to work.
part. That's right.
This was the fun part too.
Oh,
this is always the fun part. So we're going to take a short break and then come back with a couple of other guests. I feel like the piano here has already given it away, unless you're going to play. And
I
I'm not
am going to
aware.
play myself out now. All right.
That was terrible. All right, we will be back in just a couple
There's
of
no
minutes.
music
Stick with
happening.
us. There's no music happening. You're not good at this. We'll be right back. And we are back with Maclaine and Lena. I am so glad you're both here, especially you. We had to get you on a plane to get you up here.
Yeah, you had to get me out of my pajamas. You had to
I'm
get
sorry.
the cat off my lap, and
I understand the
shave.
pain of both of those things. It was just I'm on my sofa in comfy clothes and there's a cat. I don't want to leave.
yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I am very happy that you guys are both here. So we're going to talk today about the music of Heart of Thorns, which I think is kind of a given with everything on here. I'm assuming that you have more to say on the piano than Colin did, because...
Only a little bit. I'm only slightly better at the piano than Colin is.
Yes, this is not a live concert, just FYI. All right, so why don't we let you get started and
Sure.
tell us what you want to start talking about?
Yeah, so I I thought it would be really neat for fans to hear the evolution of the main theme. I think some people kind of got a window into it when it changed from the last beta or the second beta to the final beta and then the release version. It's two different versions, and
I loved hearing this story when you told me yesterday.
yeah, so there's way more evolution to it than that, and most of it is my own dissatisfaction with it. You know, it was a long kind of difficult process to get to something that I was comfortable with, and most fans never get to hear it. In fact, most people at the company haven't heard any of these earlier versions. So I thought it'd be fun to just kind of run through it and let people hear how it evolved and see behind the curtain of writing music for Guild Wars.
Yeah, so this is the main Guild Wars 2 theme. Sorry. This is the main Heart of Thorns theme.
Yeah.
And then we will kind of dive into all of the music as we go farther down. So let's start with this.
Yeah. So the very first thing I wrote for the expansion was about 2 years ago. And at that point, the story was kind of, it wasn't that it was unclear, but, audio and music comes in at the very end. So I only had a very small amount of information as to what the actual story content of the game would be. And there was some information that I'd gotten about a golden city, which of course now we all know is Tyrir, and we've seen how that all played out. But at the time, it was a little bit less. It was a little less clear what it was going to be. So I thought, all right, maybe that'll be the focus of the expansion, and I'll write the Gold City theme, and then that will also double as the expansion theme. And I had this idea for a melody that came to me when to keep it G-rated. I was getting up to take a break from my desk and taking a walk through the office, and I find that a lot of snippets of melodies come to me then because it's a moment for me to just be clear-headed. Something will just pop into my head because I'm not sitting here at the piano saying like, oh my gosh, like all these
like
chords,
stressing
they're all
over
wrong,
it.
So when you kind of relax, something will just enter your mind. Like people come up with ideas in the shower or at night. And this melody kind of popped into my head almost fully formed, and I had to drop everything I was doing. At the time I was working on, I think it was Living World Season 2 stuff, and I just stopped for about a week while I tried to get this idea out. And fans will recognize it, so I'll play it. We actually ended up recording it live at the very first orchestral recording session we did in Germany for Living World Season 2. And no one's really heard it. I think a piece of it got snuck into a trailer a few months ago. But up until now, no one's heard it in this form because I was really unhappy with it. So I'm just going to play it.
Okay,
and then
let's hear what it
talk
sounds
about
like
it afterwards.
this is what you weren't happy with?
Yeah, I wasn't psyched about it. So
It's so good.
it savvy listeners will probably know that that's the music that eventually turned into Lion's Arch Rebuilt. Last summer, when after a year of being destroyed, after Scarlet's attack, we finally decided to put it back together, and I thought that it needed this new theme. So I'll get to what it turned into in a second. But when we recorded it, I wasn't happy with it. It wasn't the performance; it was my writing. Right? I didn't think that the orchestration of the melody was strong enough. I didn't think that on the day that we were recording it, I got enough out of the performers. It needed a little bit more energy that I didn't sense, and I just thought, I'm going to let this sit in the can. And it's a shame that this piece of music, no one's ever going to hear it until today, of course. But yeah, I thought it wasn't good enough, basically. And I wanted to let the idea kind of marinate a little bit so I could come back to it. So two things about it. One is that it is in the game now. It's now the Lion's Arch Rebuilt music. There is a piece of it in the middle, though, that you might recognize from somewhere else. So the middle section, the form of it is very much like a pop song. It's like the main melody, A, main melody again, then there's a B section, and then it kind of returns to the A, and then finishes, very much like a simple Beatles song or something.
I haven't thought of that until just now, and I can't unhear that now when I hear this piece.
Yeah, you'll see that pattern a lot in a lot of the stuff. I don't want to give away my secrets. Not like it's a big one, but it's just an easy formula to follow. So the B section, I thought, okay, this is a really strong chord progression, and I want to use this in something else. And so I carried that probably a lot further than I ever should have, because in the end I ended up not using it for anything. But I repurposed the Lion's Arch music, which I'll play a little bit as sort of a special treat. We ended up re-recording that piece at the Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns recording session that we did for the expansion back in August. We had a little bit of extra time, and I thought, I want to get back in there and try this again.
Thing.
Yeah, so we ended up re-recording it, and this is another one that no one's heard. I'm just going to play a little bit, but we're gonna put this up on SoundCloud after the show, and I'll give you guys a sneak preview of what it sounds like now. A lot more energy, let's put it that way.
Okay, here we go.
So yeah, that was just a tidbit. I didn't want to sit here and listen to the whole thing again, but we will put that and the Lion's Arch
Rebuilt.
So that was Lion's Arch Reborn. So I named them and I can't get them straight.
I asked him yesterday, we were talking, and he was like, the quieter one.
Yeah, the quiet. We'll put the quiet one. That you heard it in the music between when Colin was on and when we came on. We have a live version of that, a new version, and then a new version of the Lion's Arch Reborn music. Rebuilt.
I don't know. This is a thing I would ask you.
There's rebuilding Lion's Arch and then Lion's Arch
The rebuilding
Reborn.
of Lion's Arch, that's right. Okay, that's the quiet one. And then Lion's Arch Reborn is the loud one.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to put both of those up after the show.
Doing it live.
How do I know these better than you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because
Okay.
you're good.
So as I said, the old B section from the very original version of the theme, I thought that's a really strong chord progression. I want to save that. So then I went back to the drawing board, and I thought, well, okay, I learned more about the expansion, and I said, what is this about? It's about the jungle. It's about the sort of gathering of forces to fight the jungle dragon. So it needs to be less like majestic landscapes, and it needs to be more about energy and driving and percussion and more jungly, right? And I was worried about the balance between cliche jungle sounds, like a lot of drums and flutes
bird
and stuff.
song.
Yeah, and but still maintaining some sort of warlike energy. And I tried again, and I thought, okay, I nailed it. And then we'll listen to that in a second here. And it has those elements, and it has elements that still ended up being in the final version of the theme. But I didn't think the melody was very strong, and I didn't think that. Well, let's just listen to it.
Yeah,
I'll talk
let's
about
see.
what I didn't think it was after we hear what it actually is.
All right.
So this is version 2 of the Heart of Thorns theme. Oops. Wait a second. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
It's a very good place to start.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, so that one, I mean, you can hear what I was
Maclaine
talking
didn't.
about. What's that?
Maclaine didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
could
I
be
did.
better. I mean,
I liked it. I don't know. I liked
guess.
it when I was done with it. But then, that's kind of that's the advantage of working on stuff so much farther out than the release date is you can let stuff sit with you, and it can be a blessing and a curse because you can sit there and overthink it and end up ruining something that was fine. But I feel pretty good that wasn't the right direction to go in. There was elements that I thought were cool. The heavy percussion I thought was cool. The end is very similar. The sort of big fanfare epic ending is very similar to how it currently ends. But there's some other stuff in there that I don't like the sound of the drums. I should preface this by saying that that's just a demo version. It's not live, so it doesn't quite have the same heart
Energy,
and soul and
yeah.
energy that a live recording would have. But I don't like the way the drums sound, which is my fault. I have nobody to blame but myself. And there's like this cheesy flute thing that I threw in there. I'm like, oh, it should at least have some sort of nod to like some Shakuhachi bamboo flute kind of thing. But it doesn't work. And then the most important thing is I sent this out to the studio and I got some feedback, and it was people were like, yeah, it's good, it's good.
Oh.
But and I try not to take that stuff personally because it's a collaborative process, and I don't want to feel like I'm this musical overlord. And so I'm very open to feedback, and most of the time people have been very gracious, and they don't have a lot of criticism. So that was a huge red flag to me. It was when I sent this out and people were like, yeah, it's okay,
It'll do.
So then I thought, all right, let's think about it a little bit more and then come back to it. So at this point, Season 2 is starting to wind down, and I'm starting to think about planting seeds for music for Heart of Thorns. For people who are kind of savvy and listen to that stuff, like people will know the Mordremoth theme that's been popping up and stuff, going back all the way back to Living World Season 1.
And we talked about that.
Yeah, so I'll play it.
Okay.
I need to preface this by saying that I'm a very, very poor keyboard player, and I'm not even going to attempt to play anything other than plunking out a couple notes. But the Mordremoth theme is very simple. It's like this. Right? It's just those notes. And it's built around these minor seconds, right? So in music, the simplest way to explain in musical terms,
Thank you.
a minor second is the shortest distance in music that you can move between two notes. So you have this note, and then the shortest distance you can move to the next note is a minor second, right? So it's built all around that kind of stuff. And I wanted to create a sort of underlying. It's not so much a theme. It's not really a melody. It's more just like a little bit of movement between some notes that could be used as almost like the background canvas for other melodies to be put on top of it throughout the whole expansion. All through almost every piece, as many times as I could fit it in there. So I came up with a similar sort of variation on the Mordremoth sound, which is these three notes that goes like this. Right? It's like similar. It's in a minor key, right? And it has that same minor second kind of movement. So, right, as sort of a string pattern that they could play. And I started dropping that into trailers here and there. So I'm going to play a couple clips of some trailers. This one I don't actually know. I don't know if this one went out. So this was part of a teaser that I think we canceled, despite it being finished. I wrote some music for a teaser for Ritlock coming back from the Mists, and it has this little motif. You'll start to hear it in there, and I'm just going to play about 10 seconds of this.
Okay.
So you could hear it in the strings, and you could hear it doubled by the woodwinds, and it's just something that creates some energy and a sort of sense of menace as it's pulling you forward, right, as the music continues to build around it. And then we did another trailer. This was the trailer at the end of Season 2, the big animated trailer that you see that ends with the Heart of Thorns logo, and it was the first time we kind of said, hey, we're doing a big expansion. So I used it again, and then this time I can't really duplicate it on the keyboard, but the strings play the same notes, but they do what's called tremolo, which means they are moving the bow as fast as possible. And it gives it this like shimmery, sort of buzzy sound instead of just, I can't do it, but instead of it just being one...
It's okay.
It's not possible to do the same way on a keyboard, but it gives it a little bit more tension. It's a little bit more uneasy because they're sort of shaking, you know. So I did the same thing again at the very end of that trailer. So let's play that real quick. So you can hear it. It's a little bit lower in the strings that time, which also gives it more of a throaty kind of growl sound. It makes it a lot more, like I said, menacing. It's like da-da-da-da-da-da-da, bump, bump, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, you know. And I thought, okay, that's really cool. So now I'm going to use that as the basis for this new version of the theme. And the version that I'm about to play, this is the version that was in the first couple of betas. So we recorded this one live about a little over a year ago here in Seattle. And I was like, great, we did it. We have the theme, finally. And people will recognize this. It sounds very close to the current theme. So I won't play all of it, I don't think.
Aw. You can if you want to.
Oh, okay, maybe I'll play all of it. So let's just play it, and then I'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
This is, now we're on version 3 of the theme.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry. Hey, we're back.
Oh, hello. I did not see you there.
So that will be familiar to people who played the beta. It's like out there on YouTube. We put it up. We did a big blog post with rpgfan.net, I believe. Forgive me if I got that wrong. Where we said hey, here's the debut of the Heart of Thorns theme, and then I was like, wait a second.
Never mind.
And so you can hear how it's really, really close. But there's a couple things that I thought were problematic with it. Is again, the orchestration is. I thought it was just a little bit dull, right? I thought it needed more, right? The point of it is you want the game to fire up, and you want to hear this music and immediately be transported into the world that you're about to embark on an adventure in, right? The same way, whether it's Star Wars or Game of Thrones or Star Trek, anything that you hear that within 5 seconds, less 2 seconds, you're like, oh my gosh, here we go, right? And I didn't think it had that quality. And I still wasn't super happy with the middle section that you hear, the B section that's been transported since the very beginning. And I eventually got to the point where I just had to scrap it, that's a very difficult thing, is to throw out something that you really believed in. Like for almost 2 years, I'm like, it's gonna work.
This
it's gonna work.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it never did. It never did. So now we come to version 4. This is last summer. I panicked. I freaked out, and I'm like, this is wrong.
No.
Everything's wrong, so I'm going to throw it all out and I'm going to start again. Which is, that happens for me, that always happens about 3/4 of the way into the writing process. I'm like, everything is garbage, start from scratch.
Oh, that is super stressful.
And then
just
I
to
usually,
even think about.
yeah, I'll come back around after about a week of freaking out. So I decided to start over again. And this was very short-lived. But I'm gonna play this. So this is really airing my dirty laundry. This is an incredibly unpolished demo version with digital instruments, so it's gonna sound like crap, and I'm not.
Stop that.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not. Well, I am apologizing, but I'm not really
Well,
sorry. 'cause
stop
it's,
it immediately.
But you'll hear there's a couple elements that I did draw on that ended up in the final theme. So let's just take a listen to this real quick.
Okay.
Version 4. Yeah, I must really like you guys to let you hear that,
Oh my gosh,
especially the
quit
end.
it.
So okay, so that was as far as I got before. I'm like, no, this is even worse. I gotta go back to the original idea. But there was a couple things I pulled out of it. So again, the percussion I thought was stronger. The energy was higher and felt more. There was more danger. The other thing is that motif that I was telling you about that the strings play. That's like, I thought, even though I've planted the seeds for that, I don't like it. I am going to throw that out, and I'm going to start over again with a new idea, and I'm going to try to explain this quickly. So, the Guild Wars 2, the original Guild Wars 2 theme music is simply up and down a minor scale, right? It's like, right?
It's like a nostalgia wave every time I hear that.
Yeah, and it's great because it's so simple. It allows you to adapt it in a ton of different ways, all of which have been done by me and Jeremy and Lena over the years. Like, we've all taken that bit of clay and turned it into a lot of different stuff, which is, I love how simple it is,
It's really malleable. Like, if you're doing anything in a minor key, just like throw it in there and
Exactly.
it'll totally work.
Yeah, and it imparts that information of this is Guild Wars, but then you can say, well, but it's Guild Wars, but it's a little bit different,
But it's recognizable.
Exactly. So I thought, well, all right, let me use that as a basis, but let me get a little clever with it. So if you continue to go up the minor scale, that's the next note, right? And I thought, well, this is the first expansion for Guild Wars 2, so let's add that extra note. So instead of the motif going, it goes. Right? So it covers those first 4 notes of the Guild Wars theme, and it keeps repeating them. But then on the the sort of final repeat, it adds that extra note. So it's like, all right, super music nerdy, like no one's ever going to think about that. But to me, that was sort of my rationale to say, like, here's a new element. Like, let's make this Guild Wars, but let's push it a little bit further, and how can I do that musically? So that's now the underlying string pattern that you hear in the most recent version. And then the other piece from my Panic version 4 that I took is the B section. Like I said, I was really unhappy with it, so I threw it out. And I thought I needed some new chords that add. It was a little too happy sounding, for lack of a better term, and I needed more tension, right? So these are these chords at the end of version 4. I'll play them again, even though they sound awful.
Stop that.
So that element, even though it's not fleshed out at all in version 4, I thought, okay, that's something to build on. And so that leads us to the current final version, which has bits and pieces of every version before it, but is the theme that we all know and love. So should I play it?
Please.
Okay, all right. This is the last piece that we're going to listen to.
We've gone through all these iterations. We may as well have the payoff.
Okay. War, Guild
Yeah.
Wars 2, Heart of Thorns,
Nice.
musical evolution.
That was really neat to see the iteration and the evolution and how it progressed and what you loved and what you didn't love.
Yeah, I usually don't see all of that, especially not some of the the sort of rough spots that you showed. Like it's. I certainly wouldn't. I don't think I even kept them. I probably just delete them instantly.
Yeah,
so.
I'm bad about holding on to things too long, but I do think it at least illustrates the point that they say inspiration it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, which is like a really cliche thing to get your kids motivated to do their homework or something.
I've never even bothered using that one on my kids. I'm like, just do it.
But it's true. I mean, the inspiration for a melody or a chord progression that comes instantaneously.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't know how to explain that. I don't think anyone can really explain that. But then it's all about working it until it's right, and that's just hard work, and it takes a long time. And people only see the final product and think, oh, this 1.5-minute long theme, whatever. This person obviously came up with this instantaneously and was like Amadeus, just like, oh, scribing it like brilliant, oh my gosh. But it's definitely not like that.
Amadeus just couldn't
No.
sleep one night,
Yeah.
So
So anyway, but that's that. So let's
Cool.
talk about something else.
it's still going to be music. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So you were talking about just feeling disappointed at one point when we had put that out, and I know you've been through that too, where you're going through iterations. When you're iterating on this, and as it's progressing, and you're
Yeah.
figuring out what you don't like. What's the ratio? And you don't have to give numbers. What's the ratio between satisfaction that you're making it better and disappointment that you lost things, and just frustration that it's not done?
I think it's always whenever something starts to work, the frustration that it's taking that you didn't get it right before kind of goes away because it gets overwhelmed by yes, it's finally finally there. Yeah, progress. And to give an example of something coming to you, I was working on in lieu of Maclaine actually having written the Terrier theme in the beginning, which eventually turned into the Heart of Thorns theme. Eventually, I took over the Terrier theme and obviously saw it through to completion. But for a long time, I was having a really hard time with it because I was really kind of picturing this really big epic thing in my head, and I just kept listening to John Williams and all of these just sort of seminal big bombastic but melodic soundtracks, and I was just I've got to capture that, and I've got to and I got to a point where I was just I'm trying to write someone else's soundtrack for them, and so I got to a point where I realized I'm not writing what I would write. And so
you're writing what someone else would write.
Right.
That has to make it harder.
Yeah, and it was incredibly hard because I kept writing all these things, and I was like, but it's not exactly what I wanted it to be. But what I wanted it to be was not actually my music. And so eventually I was just okay, no, I'm going to start over, much like Maclaine did, and just say okay, what would I write? And just kind of trying to rediscover that is what would I actually write for this? And so what I ended up going back to for the Terrier theme was, instead of starting off with just because I was starting too soon, or I was starting too far in rather. So the moment that I was trying to start from, and I kept on referencing back to the sort of announced trailer for Heart of Thorns, where and if you remember back to the very first pre-recorded live stream that we talked about, I was talking very obliquely about this because Terrier wasn't actually an announced thing yet, and so I couldn't say oh yeah, it's that it's the gold city called Terrier, the Forgotten City.
You're not allowed to talk about that yet.
Yeah, I can say that now. But yeah, so the moment when Ritlock's busting up the doors and suddenly the camera zooms through and you're going down the waterfall and everything, and I was starting from that door opening moment.
Awesome.
And that, that's what that was a mistake, was starting
Really?
from that
See,
moment.
that seems this is why you do what you do and I do what I do. Because that
But
to
I
me
was
sounds
trying,
wonderful.
but I was trying to burst in through the door before I even established where I was. And that was kind of the metaphor that I was going through when I was failing over and over again to write this theme. And so I was just here's the theme. And I had to kind of step back. And then, so if you actually, if you've heard I don't have a fancy, tablet or laptop to play this on,
Maclaine.
but But you can go through. It's
Yeah.
on the Terrier themes on the SoundCloud, so you can easily go to that one, or we can talk about other ways to get the soundtrack later.
We should do
But
that.
yeah, but if you listen to the beginning of that, it starts with just a very simple like harp thing and sort of establishing the little sort of arpeggio and everything, like da 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 or da 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 da, and just kind of like going into that sort of arpeggio and everything, and kind of establishing the jungle first before the door opens, and sort of like flying around and just kind of like getting that really like nice table setting for like here's where we are, and then you get that like door opening moment of like then it goes into like the big thing, and it was kind of a lot like when I was writing for Labyrinthine Cliffs. It was about that ascent. It was about that motion through the area, and so when I was realizing that I was writing for a very like specific, just like static shot, I realized I needed to go back to kind of what I did before and like kind of score emotion rather than just like one screenshot.
I'm having a weirdly difficult time with this, and I understand why you wanted to start there, because my brain doesn't want to step back and establish the jungle first. It
Sure.
feels like it should be at that, and I can understand why you had such a difficult time with that.
Well, it's like a counterpoint to what I was talking about with the main theme, right? This is scoring a place. Let's create a sort of half-baked metaphor here. So
Sure.
this is sort of scoring
My favorite.
a place, and then the main theme has to score a mood, and
Yeah.
you need to feel that mood instantly. But with a place, you want to encounter that same sense of wonder that as a player, you don't start the game in the most beautiful city / map in the whole game. You have to eventually uncover it. You know what I mean? You have to kind of wander through difficulty, and then the reward is, oh my gosh, this beautiful landscape.
Right.
is
You
just
start
sort
in
of opened up in
Shaymore
front of
before
you.
you turn around and realize there's a giant Divinity's Reach behind you.
Right, and it's
It's a slightly startling moment.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just creates more drama. The moment when it hits that peak is
Yeah.
much more stronger because you started down here rather than saying like, bam, like we're gonna hit you in the face with some gold city.
Right. But it's also like
Why do
a
we call the
very
expansion that?
bam, hit you in the face with Gold City. That would make a really interesting acronym. But no, but there's always like that kind of like toss-up between writing something cinematically for a space and getting too cinematic with it, because there's also the danger of just like sort of wandering off and just like writing an imaginary film when technically a player is directing it themselves, and they're not going to be like seeing everything that you want them to see with the music. And so even though you're kind of writing a more of a cinematic sweeping, or even though I was writing more of a cinematic sweeping thing, like I still had to like, this could be for just looking at the pavement in Gold City, or it could just be for like actually like running through literally the entire city. And so like it had to have that versatility to it.
Yeah. You know what? That kind of brings me to something. Do you mind if I pick your brain some more about
Go for
Terrier
it.
and Arc Basin in general?
Yeah.
So I was just kind of going through and listening to the different themes, and then I realized, oh, Lena did all of these, so
Yeah.
that's super handy. Did you try? I mean, because you have like the battle theme in Terrier, and then you have general Arc Basin work.
Yeah.
And you have just the regular Terrier. Were you trying to like weave those together? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay, I was.
Yeah,
I was
there's
like,
a lot
I think
of.
they sound alike, but I'm also musically stupid, so maybe
You would
I'm
be
wrong.
correct then.
Yay!
Yeah,
Not
there's.
about the musically stupid part.
No,
but,
no.
I didn't
Thanks,
go there
Maclaine.
until
I
you
wasn't
did.
I know,
actually
I need
trying to
clarify,
insult
'cause
Ruby.
This is on record. So
But then
we
you
need to
turn
make
it
sure.
around on me. But no, like.
But he's right. Carry on. I'm sorry.
But there's a lot of like thematically similar, well, like literally similar elements in sort of. It's kind of a trilogy of pieces that I kind of consider the core Auric Basin themes. There's Terrier. There's the attack on Terrier,
Yeah.
which is the combat theme, or for the big meta. And then there's also a lullaby, an Exalted's lullaby, which is what I originally sort of considered like this sort of night theme for the area, but it kind of evolved into more of just a general area music for it. And then there's a fourth theme that I wrote actually first, which was kind of more of like, here is the jungle, and has a little more of the sort of percussion and sort of those instruments that kind of like set the tone for a jungle environment. But those three, like I started with the city theme with Tarrier.
Okay.
And there was two main elements, and I actually learned. It was funny. Like this was how I wrote anyways, but I learned kind of like how to define it by reading. One of my favorite composers, Bear McCreary, who did Battlestar Galactica and all that stuff.
Oh.
He has an amazing blog. And if I forget what the website is, but you can check it out if you search for Bear McCreary blog, where he basically just goes into like in-depth like composition, just kind of what Maclaine did just right now, but like in a blog format, and be like, here's this like arpeggio that I did for this theme, and here's this theme, and he'll show the sheet music for it, and he'll talk about his process of actually writing and scoring these TV shows that he's working on. And so what I realized with the Tarrier theme is I had kind of two established motifs with it. One was the actual melody, and then the other one was the little ostinato that it kind of starts in. An ostinato is a repeating phrase.
Thank you.
That starts it off with the harp. So there's da 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 da, and so that kind of like kicks everything off. And then when the melody comes in, da 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 da, that one. And so that's sort of those are the two motifs there. And so for the combat theme, I took that ostinato, the repeating phrase, and I turned it into what the violins start in when it kicks off. And so instead of going, being all pretty and like da 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 da, it goes da 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 da. And so it kind of like takes that same progression and then moves it forward into the instruments and brings it, energetic and combat and all this stuff, and just kind of played with everything. And then the Tarrier melody comes back in sort of the victorious section in the Attack on Tarrier theme, and then also with the lullaby, the night theme, the flutes are playing kind of a modified version of that same theme. So it's all kind of taking these elements and reconfiguring them, and it's kind of like what I was saying earlier with like the Guild Wars theme, like, and I was on a podcast and asked about what makes a good theme a while back, and after racking my brain, I was like, I think it's the versatility of a theme, and I think like the theme's versatility is what gives it the most strength, because you can involve it in the most amount of music. So if you're writing for, a setting which involves like the people, the exalted, you want to be able to write a theme that you can then apply to a whole bunch of different setting or different pieces of music that still kind of conveys that same the character and everything about it melodically, as well as and it helps tie everything together. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun to just take one thing and then just kind of start finding other ways to transform it and evolve it into different settings.
And, working with various settings, just as a player, one of the things that, and this is just some of the most fun I've had in Heart of Thorns so far, when you're doing the meta in Tarrier.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much both of you have done the various areas, but I can't remember if it's south, I don't know. But you go in there and you fly up and you hit your glider and you have to swing around and drop bombs on the Octovine.
That's so fun.
And the first time I did it, usually I've kind of got like the music in one ear and my guildmates in voice chat in the other ear. But this time was like just the music, and I still had it up, and I'm soaring around in battle, and I just had this moment of this music works. This works with it so well, because I've just flown up in the air and I'm doing this amazing aerial attack with like 4 or 5 other people. And I have background music that matches this, that works for this, and it felt good. And so, nice work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I actually
That's
didn't
always
realize
the best feelings, like getting compliments like that. Just like, it works. Like, hey,
it works.
That's
It
really
felt
great.
amazing. It just elevated the gameplay, and I don't care if that sounds completely hokey.
But
Because
that's
it
what
really
we're
did.
trying to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what we want to have
Yeah.
happen. We're not just writing music for the sake of writing it. It's to bring out the emotions that we want players
bored.
to feel.
Well, it was pretty cool. It felt good. It was fun. I should have checked into it sooner. I didn't even realize you wrote that entire thing until 2 days ago when I was going, okay, I want to talk about this thing. Which one of them do I need to talk? That was Lena. I have to tell her. That felt really good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I should
thank
say
you.
that the very first thing I played was the original Gold City theme, which obviously turned into something totally different. And I realized that I didn't have a grasp on what of what Tarrier and Auric Basin needed to be, and that's why I handed it over to Lena, who I think did a much much
Nice
better
work.
job than I was capable of doing.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
Well, that seems like a really good note. We're actually past 1 o'clock right now.
Oh wow. Time
I
flies.
I know we're having way too much fun, but we have a soundtrack where you guys can get all of this music, and this seems like a good time to talk about that. So you can find everything at guildwars2.com/shop. Because you can get it on Amazon, iTunes, I am 8-bit. Do you guys want to tell about the vinyl?
Sure.
And we can show it.
it's on
Actually, I think
vinyl.
we have,
Yes, it's
yeah.
on vinyl.
Well, I mean, it will be.
I think.
It's so cool.
So
looks really pretty.
the I am 8-bit people, we've been working with them on some stuff for merchandise and some promotional marketing things, I think, for a while now, and they sponsored TwitchCon with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there at TwitchCon. We did the live performance thing
That
from
was so
the
much
Crow's
fun.
Nest, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And then I was talking to some of the people, behind the scenes when other segments were happening at TwitchCon, and they pitched the idea of vinyl. I had kind of given up.
What? That was John and Amanda?
Yes,
Seriously?
because they have a pretty
They're
sort
so
of
great.
thriving section of their shop that's game soundtracks
Mm-hmm.
on vinyl, and they were like, let's do one, and I thought, what? We can do a physical release. So it seems strange to skip a CD, and who knows whether or not that'll happen in the future. It's not up to me.
Or me.
Or any of us in this room, so please don't bother us. To have something tangible in this day and age is really cool, and
Yeah, it is.
It's something that gets touted a lot about how nice it is to hold it in your hands, and it's
Yeah.
not just a cheap record. It's high quality vinyl. It's amazing artwork, high
Yeah.
quality printing. The whole thing that they did, all of it. We just sort of consulted and said yes or no.
And that's like the benefit of vinyl too, is like you get just such a cool package out of it.
Yeah.
It's something that you can just display, hey, like that.
So I
and
don't
just
own a
really
turntable,
cool, like
and I want this.
high
You should get one.
resolution prints of art, and just open it up and it's just art. And then there's you wrote some liner notes for it too, right?
I'm going to. Yeah, it's. I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to do that today, I think.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's just a way to encapsulate all the things that we feel and say about the music in situations like this. This is
Yeah.
a physical way of saying, here's the thing. Like, we worked on this aspect of the game really hard, and
Yeah.
now you can own that piece of it.
Totally.
As a beautiful package.
And just like honestly, when you mentioned like I Am 8-Bit was going to be doing vinyl for us, I was just like deer in the headlights, because I was like, oh my gosh, like you go on their site and like look at the soundtracks that they already have there, and it's like, we're gonna be there.
Yeah, right.
That's really
Yeah,
You're in
cool.
good
it's
company.
Great company.
Yeah.
Or all of them are in good company now. Whichever. Yeah.
And we should say too that when you get the vinyl, when you pre-order it,
Yeah,
you'll
can-
instantly receive the digital version of the soundtrack for download.
Yeah.
Yeah, within 48 hours, because the vinyl's releasing later
semi-instant.
this quarter, so you can pre-order the vinyl now through I Am 8-Bit, but the digital you can have now.
Yeah.
So, I love instant gratification. It's the best.
And do you want to reiterate where the digital itself is?
Yeah, you can get the digital at, well, again, if we can show the album art again, the link, wow, I totally forgot the word. I was like, what's a URL? The URL
The
is
letters with
right there,
.com.
and you can find, that will take you to the Amazon link, to the iTunes link, and to I Am 8-Bit's link. I Am 8-Bit is where you get the vinyl, and then the others are purely digital. So, all right, that was a lot of fun. Thank you
Yeah.
both. Thank you, Maclaine. Thank you, Lena.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you to your girlfriend for letting us borrow you.
Yes.
For-
Yeah. And my cat, most importantly.
And the cat, will send him back home to you both very, very soon. All right, I will let you get back to work, and
Yeah.
we actually are going to steal some more of your time before you leave.
Oh,
But
okay. Okay.
see how I do that on camera, and you can't retaliate?
Yeah. Oh, wait, we should talk about the Lion's Arch music, putting it on SoundCloud. We're going to do that.
Oh, that's right. We're going to do that
Yeah.
after the show. We have two
new,
pieces.
New live versions of the previous Lion's Arch music that came out last summer when the city
Yeah.
was rebuilt. Forget about those old versions. They're terrible.
Stop it.
These new versions are way better.
Stop apologizing for your work. Stop calling it terrible. We all think it's pretty good.
All right. Well,
That's
it's
really
still terrible. Okay.
Oh my gosh, you guys. All right, so we are not, technically we're running late for On Point. We do not have On Point today because Jebro's ISP is doing work, and they were like, hey, we're cutting off your internet now, and you can have it back on Saturday.
Oh.
Wow.
So that was totally not his fault. We miss him, and we will have him back very, very soon for On Point. For now, make sure you follow our channel here on Twitch so you don't miss future shows, because they're going to be pretty great. Yeah. And thank you both for coming.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, we will see you guys next week. Oh, and I'm going to do one more little thing here.
Mm.
Can we scoot this just a tiny bit?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. It's just a little thing here, no big deal.
Okay.
Hey, Mark, can we show off this over here? Thank you. You know where I like?
Good jump.
I like ore.
That's cool.
Oh.